Good morning. I'm Marcus Cauchi from Sandler Training, and today's webinar is brought to you on behalf of the Institute of Sales Management, and the topic is how to build a powerful partner sales channel and the 13 mistakes to avoid. For those of you who aren't familiar with channel sales is essentially selling through third parties. They can be value-added resellers, managed service providers, agents, distributors, licensees. And it's one of the toughest jobs there is because you have to be able to manage without power, only influence. And that really takes a very special type of salesperson. It also requires meticulous planning. It requires powerful strategic thinking. It requires you to put tools in place in order to enable you to create the right kind of environment, create a shared common language, work towards common purpose. And so to the first slide, which is build a partner-centric channel. Historically, channel sales has been the illegitimate ugly sister of direct sales for many vendors. It's been seen as a competitor. It's been seen as lower margin, and as a result, there's a tendency to use and abuse partners. Not in all cases, but in many cases, it's a tough balancing act between serving the interests of the vendor, serving the interests of the partner, and serving the interests of the end user customer. So in order to be able to build a partner-centric channel, you have to start with the right intent. You have to make sure that you understand that you are in service. Service does not mean servitude. Stephen Covey once said to me when I was at an event that he was running, the greatest among us serve the most. And that stuck with me. It taught me a very valuable lesson that in order to serve other people's interests, I have to understand them. I have to be not I-centered, because partners sell for their reasons, not our reasons. And we need to look at this as a partnership of equals, where we're working towards common purpose. We have our mutual interest out on the table. We're absolutely clear. We don't sell selfishly. We understand what's in it for them, and we need to find ways to make sure that they want to sell on our behalf. So we have to ask ourselves the question, why would they want to sell on our behalf? We teach a rule that is if your foot is hurting, you're probably standing on your own toe. So get out of the way of your partner and their willingness to sell on your behalf. Don't become an obstacle to them allowing you to speak to their end user customers. Don't, under any circumstances, allow yourself to get in the way by becoming a thorn in their side, giving them cause or reason not to want to work with you. Make sure that you understand up front what each side requires, and even going so far as to understanding what it's going to be like if and when you divorce. Who gets to keep the kids? Who gets to keep the client? What's the relationship? How is that handover going to work? Make sure you provide them with the tools that help them to sell. Don't just give them product information, feature advantage and benefit product spec sheets. That isn't being a partner. Make sure that you are absolutely clear in all of your communication and develop the skill of upfront contracting. Make sure that you are clear so that you can prevent avoidable conflict. Ambiguity is the mother of all disasters. And while constructive conflict is good, you can disagree about different approaches and you can argue about that. It never becomes personal, and at the end you always achieve an outcome, which is we agree to do this and we all stand by it. So communication is critical in any form of partner-centric sales channel. Now, what are the qualities that make you a good partner? Do you care about your partner's success, or are you selfish? Do you communicate honestly, with integrity? Do you do what you say you will do? Are you someone who can be trusted to keep your word? Because every time you lie to your prospect, or any time you lie to your partner, and then you get caught, they will never believe another word that comes out of your mouth. Do you seek first to understand, then to be understood? Or are you always pushing your agenda? Got anything for me this month? Got anything for me this month? As opposed to working with them to help them develop their business, develop their pipeline. Are you communicating well internally within your own organization and acting as the champion of your partnerships and protecting them from acts of idiocy? I've heard of situations where the CFO of a vendor decided money's a bit tight this month, so we're not going to pay our partners commissions. How stupid is that? Are you communicating effectively, externally, with your partners, with the end user marketplace? If you're not, then perhaps you need to look at your own communication and always look in the mirror. If something isn't working, always start by looking in the mirror. As a partner, do you differentiate effectively? Not by what you sell, but by how you sell it. Putting together a bunch of features, advantages, and benefits will make you sound like a Me Too provider. That's not helping your partner to succeed, and all it's doing is giving them a dilemma. And the dilemma is, well, why should we sell this stuff over that stuff? Why should we sell yours over theirs? Make sure that you're helping them to identify problems so that you can work on fixing those together. And critical skills are listening and questioning. Teach your partner's salespeople how to question for insight, not just understanding. Teach your partner's technical team how to question for pain and then feed that back so that the sales pipeline is constantly being fed and existing accounts grow from small acorns to big oaks. Make sure that you are very strong at learning how to diagnose before you prescribe. Often, channel salespeople are accused of selling stuff just for the sake of making their target. If you prescribe before you diagnose, you're guilty of malpractice, and an awful lot of that happens in the sales environment. A great channel salesperson understands the philosophy of win, 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 or no deal. They're willing to walk away from bad business if it's bad for the vendor, if it's bad for the partner, or if it's bad for the end user. They will pull the plug because they understand that referrals into the partner's client base are a privilege, not a right. And they will bend over backwards and jump through hoops and through fire to protect those relationships that the partners have with their end user customers. They will treat partner salespeople as if they were their own. They're not going to have that ludicrous belief, well, if we train them, they may go off and sell on behalf of our partner, our competition. They're not afraid of that. They will look after those salespeople. They will be good at recruiting, both for partnerships and also identifying the salespeople who will work on their behalf. They will contract with the senior management, and they're comfortable operating at every level from CEO to cleaner. It doesn't make any difference whether they're dealing with technical people, operational people, financial people, legal people. They're good at establishing relationships. They're good at making sure that they're tying all those loose ends together and making sure the right people are having the right conversations at the right time, in the right way, with the right people, with a clear next step, clearly defined. Great partners understand that failure is inevitable. They understand that failure is your best teacher, and they create a learning culture. They don't punish failure. Otherwise, they stifle risk-taking. They stifle entrepreneurship. They stifle creativity. And we want our partners to be entrepreneurial. We want them to take risks. We want them to go from lower to higher value with the possibility of losing some or all of what we've got. We want them to be creative. We want them to let us into their accounts so that we can land and expand. They're not rescuing. So they don't create a culture of learned helplessness and upward delegation. They don't incur needless costs, and they don't become a bottleneck because of that rescuing habit. What they are is firm but fair. They're strong coaches. They midwife their partners through deals. They strategize. They tell the partners clearly their belief when it's an appropriate time to cut the strings and let an opportunity go. They capture lessons, and they understand that the recruitment process is a courtship. Before you put a ring on a partner's finger, make sure that you're marrying the right person. Now, in terms of developing the right partners or recruiting the right partners, channel managers have to have a high degree of ambition and drive and be able to seek out and recognize it in others. They need to be able to plant their own feet. They need to be able to understand when and recognize when some partnership is trying to foist a non-performer on them and insist that they only get the very best salespeople working on their business. They need to be willing to give and get a no, both at partner level and with the prospect. They need to know that a wrong hire can hurt them and that the wrong kind of customer will tie up scarce and costly resources, divert attention from genuine opportunities, and waste company time for little or no payback, possibly even damaging the brand. They'll be fine identifying a loss as such, and the sooner the better. An early no is like saving a penalty. The game is won on goal difference. They'll be great questioners and listeners who let others speak, and they only speak when they have something to say, usually in the form of an insightful question. They understand that their performance depends on the performance of individual salespeople working for their partners, so they do everything in their power to help those salespeople to succeed. They coach, they train, they provide tools, and they provide the necessary resources to succeed, and understand that while it's great to learn from your mistakes, the wisest learn from the mistakes of others. They capture lessons and share them, and we want to see a habit of this when we're recruiting them. They're wise to common mistakes and know what hasn't worked in the past so that old mistakes aren't repeated. They build processes and insist on development of systems to drive the right behaviors and identify behaviors that lead to poor and successful outcomes so that they can be avoided or eliminated or repeated and scaled. They coach, mentor, and train partner salespeople as if they're their own. Partners who don't take the help are put on performance management programs and replaced if they don't improve. They're always looking for the A players, and when you're looking for an A player in channel sales management, be aware that only 1 in 200 are going to be A players, which means that if you are the director of channel sales, you need to be interviewing possibly 4 to 8 candidates a week. Let me repeat that, 4 to 8 candidates a week. And as a channel manager, you need to be interviewing and trying to select strong partners constantly. They're looking for top performers, and they understand that you hire slow and fire fast. So if you're going to try and recruit a good partner, there's an entire chapter called Designing the Ideal Channel Manager, and it talks about how the self-concept of the channel manager is important. Their beliefs and values around selling, partnerships and partners, selling through the channel, customers, competition, the market, the company, dealing with authority relationships, money, what their rights are, critical. So, moving on. What are a channel manager's rights? Well, let me start by talking about the 3 lies in every form of sales. The customer is in. The buyer is always right, and the man with the gold makes the rules. All of these are lies, created and perpetrated and driven home by buyers. The customer's not king. He's the man with the problem. The buyer may occasionally be right, but more often than not, they don't know what the real problem is, which is why they're in trouble and they need help. And the man with the gold has the commodity. Channel managers have two core functions: recruit the best partners and then find the best salespeople and then get the best out of them. And their number one priority once they have them is to build a full, overflowing quality pipeline so that both they and the partners have choice. They have the right to ask tough questions, and if a question is worth asking, it's worth getting the answer to the question they asked. They need to be strong at creating upfront contracts, upfront agreements. And the upfront agreement is there to protect and work for both sides. It's crucial that you are, as a channel manager, focused on win-win or no deal. You're focused on mutual purpose. You understand that it's okay to agree a prenup before you put a ring on each other's finger. It's okay to establish clear expectations about what's acceptable and not acceptable behavior, about reporting, about communication, about working with their salespeople, about communicating with the end user customer, about setting and establishing targets, making sure that there are behavioral plans in place which the management of the partner agrees to enforce to make sure that the salespeople within the partner are behaving in an accountable manner, that they're working towards a 90-day plan for advancement within their target accounts, making sure that there's territory and account planning going on, that you're sharing competitor intelligence, and you're both constantly being vigilant about what is going on in your marketplace. You're clear about how you'll designate accounts, what will happen at review milestones, and I'll go into that in more detail later. You're sharing development tools for the pipeline. You make sure that you have educated one another on what an ideal prospect looks like and how to identify them from the symptoms and pain indicators that they're likely to be able to express. You identify what the causes are and what the impacts are using a tool called CAPS. You manage the velocity of the pipeline, and you have the right to disqualify early non-opportunities before you tie any of your resources up in duck shoot demos, which result in just cost and the salespeople chasing and their pipeline turning into a Kim Kardashian with a big fat bottom. You have the right to agree upfront how you will compensate your partners, what the terms are, how your partners will create more revenue from their territory, agreeing performance levels so that you see that they're hitting them over time, and to confront non-performance in a nurturing but firm and fair way. Partners want to rise up the book so that they go from bronze to silver to gold to platinum, and as a result, it must be clear what is precisely what is expected of them in order to do that, to qualify for the benefits of larger discounts, better support, better service. Account management is another absolutely key area. Who will own the account? What criteria will you each use for forecasting? How will you report? How will you agree on client access? Who owns maintenance and support? And what happens in the event of a breakdown in the relationship? How will you separate? You operate as equals. A huge red flag is where the partner will not let you engage with the end user, but equally pushing too early, too hard to get access to the end user is unfair as well, because you haven't earned that trust. Prospecting is life in sales. If you don't have a full pipeline, you will be needy, desperate, and probably broke. you won't have choice. So you have to chase anything and everything, no matter how bad the margin, how difficult and unpleasant working with that prospect might be. So you need to focus on filling the top of the pipeline with quality prospects. And to do that, you need to focus on the leading indicator of daily unique effective conversations. You need to get down and dirty with your partners to make sure that their pipeline is constantly being filled. You need to teach them how to do a good 30-second commercial. You need to drive opportunities through the funnel with sufficient velocity so that it's constantly moving down or clearing out. And deals are advancing. They're not getting stuck spinning their wheels. And you're keeping a close eye on the number of opportunities moving from qualified prospect to closable. And in the book, there's a definition of what a prospect is versus a qualified prospect and a closable prospect. To be honest, in my experience, the majority of salespeople forecast suspects. These are not people who are in your target market, have a problem you can fix, dealing with a decision maker who's willing and able to make the decision to buy, dealing with a decision maker who's willing and able to make the decision to invest the time, the money, the resources, and provide access, and working towards a clearly defined timetable. Now, in our world, we teach that that has a 10%, let me repeat it, 10% probability of closing. So for forecasting, that isn't a good bet. They have to move to qualified prospect and then to closable prospect in order to achieve any value in the forecast. They have the right to honor agreements and they have the right to parity. Great channel managers also know how to design their ideal partner. They know that if a partner is operating out of their back bedroom, they're going to have a problem. So they ask the question, can you pin your logo to their office door? If it's too small, they may not be able to scale. Now, I'm not saying don't work with those sorts of partners, but be clear up front what a good partner looks like. Is someone besides the CEO their top salesperson? If they are the only salesperson within the organization, chances are they'll become a bottleneck or they'll get too busy as your business grows. Make sure that they've been able to pass that skill on, or they've been able to recruit other salespeople, or at least it's in their roadmap and they're sticking to that roadmap and timetable. How do they get new business? Is it purely through referral? Now, in the early stages of a partnership, that might work very well, but as you scale, they need to have a more systematic approach to new business development. They need to be able to understand which of their existing accounts they keep, which ones they have to win, which ones they have to recapture, which ones they have to expand, which ones they have to sack, how they're going to go about getting those new customers. Are they going to be using social selling, prospecting by phone? Are they going to be using public speaking? Are they going to be using seminars and webinars? Are they going to be using direct mail, direct marketing? Are they going to be using alliance partners, referral partnerships? There's a whole raft of ways to get to market, but if they only have all their eggs in one basket and that's referral, that would probably be an alarm bell for me. What kind of reputation do they have? Have you taken up references with their existing customers, their users? Are they people who focus on service excellence? Do they keep their word? Is their culture more technical than sales? Certainly in the IT space, that's often the case, where a great engineer or technician sets up a business, and as a result, they want to win a few customers, but they can't really scale sales and they tend to flatline. Now, again, I'm not saying don't partner with those organizations, but understand that it makes good sense to spend time, energy, money, and resources and provide them with the tools to help them sell. Because at the end of the day, that's why you're recruiting partners, to sell stuff. Now, they may be implementation partners, and this ties back to what their personal emotional drivers are in terms of why they sell, why they're in business. because it may be that they love doing the implementations, but without more business, they're going to struggle to grow. Are your business cultures compatible and complementary? If they're not, you will rapidly find yourself in a situation where you won't like each other. You'll end up in conflict. And so it's critical that right from the outset, you understand what your motivations and their motivations are, and you see if there's a fit. Another key question is, how easy are they to deal with from the outset? If it's difficult to deal with them from the get-go, they don't communicate, they don't respond, they take ages to get back to you. When they do, they're defensive. These are alarm bells. If getting the paperwork together and the contracting is painful, I mean, difficult is okay, but painful, not. Are they defensive when you challenge them? I've mentioned it before, but how do they feel about you talking to their customers? You need to agree this up front. You need to agree what the conditions are before you invest time, money, resources, provide them with tools, give them access to your portal, train them. You've got to make sure that they're open to you talking to their customers, because you're the expert in your range of products and services. They're not. They may be implementation experts. They may understand that marketplace. They're experts in those particular customers. And the idea is to create synergy. The idea is that together, you're more than you would be on your own, and you bring more value to the end user customer. Now, this is something that's often overlooked. When you're onboarding and recruiting partners, make sure you get to speak to their salespeople. And if their salespeople aren't asking good questions, that has to be an alarm bell. If they're talking about you, or you're talking about your product, and they don't ask you the simple question, well, Fred, that's great, but how do we use that to sell it? What pain is that helping the prospect to fix? How do they get to that point? If they're not asking strategic questions, if they're not asking good sales-based questions, that would set my alarm bells going. Do they welcome your onboarding process? Do they recognize that that first 120 days is critical, utterly crucial to your success? Because if they don't recognize that the onboarding process is key, then what will happen is they will go dark on you. They'll go silent within the first 90 to 120 days. And that first 120 days is where they're evaluating you. Your products, your service, the relationship that they have with you is the partnership, the one that you sold to them. So in the first 30 days, focus like a laser beam on maximizing engagement and helping them to build that sales funnel. Make sure there are daily behaviors. Now, for you to be able to do that, you need to be willing to dedicate, I would suggest, no less than 25% of your working time helping them to get off the ground, which means I wouldn't go on a land grab trying to recruit lots and lots of partners. Better to spend your time marry at leisure, yeah, and repent. Marry in haste and repent at leisure, disaster. So marry in leisure and don't repent in haste, because what you should be doing is taking your time to help them become successful. It's like when you're hiring a salesperson. Those first 120 days, is this the job I was sold? Well, partners are saying, are these people the people they profess to be when they sold me into this partnership? Is this what I really bought? Or is it what I thought I bought? Make sure that you focus on helping them to fill that funnel. So one of the great tactics that I would use is spending time with them on what we call surging days, where you're sitting down with them and together you're prospecting for business to help them fill their pipeline, because business for them is business for you. Another critical factor is, will they let you train their salespeople as if they are your own? I've mentioned earlier that often vendors are reluctant to train partner salespeople other than in product knowledge, which is a catastrophic choice. But will they let you train their salespeople in your selling system? Now, obviously, I'm partisan, and I have an opinion that Sandler is a fantastic methodology. But if you don't speak the same language, if you aren't working towards common purpose with a common process, odds are you will find yourself at odds in the sales process. So make sure that they'll let you train their people as if they're your own, and make sure that's contracted for and agreed. And if it's not happening, an escalation process is in place when you're setting up the relationship right from the outset. Will they do regular pipeline review meetings with you? Your job as a channel sales manager is to be a manager of sales. Now, that's really tough in an environment where you have to manage without power, and I'll go to that topic in a moment. You've got to make sure that you're advancing what's in the pipeline, clearing out what's not true. If there's anything that's stuck but it has legs on it, to make sure that you're moving it forward. It's your job to do that. And if your partners are very technical, they may not know how to. So agreeing up front that these pipeline reviews are about helping them to achieve their goals and objectives is key. Do you know what good looks like? Do you both agree on that? Because if you don't, then chances are you will get sucked into non-opportunities. Your technical resources, which are scarce and expensive, will get tied up in that, in chasing those duff deals. And have you identified what win-win-win outcomes look like? What does good look like in terms of the deal? So, moving on to recruiting and onboarding your partners effectively. Make sure that you've been able to identify those quick wins. If you don't understand what a quick win looks like, and then chances are you don't really understand how to map out a territory. Quick wins are the ones that they can win from cold, where they can recapture existing or historical customers that have maybe lapsed or gone quiet. But the quickest wins are expanding existing accounts. And going through an exercise in the onboarding process of dividing their existing accounts into A's, B's, and C's. Okay? A's are elephants, B's are deer, C's are rabbits. Okay? C's might be opportunities for you to do quick turnaround and be able to get some cash coming through the door. Because you need to understand that your partner salespeople are coin operated. If they're not making money in the first 90 days, they're going to lose interest pretty quick. So be able to identify what those quick wins look like. Be able to recognize the qualities that they have in common. Make sure that you're concentrating your energy on helping them to make money fast and to be able to identify where those opportunities are. Which of the C's could become B's? Which of the rabbits could transform into deer? Which of the deer could become elephants? And which of the elephants could become whales or even unicorns? Understanding how to define those in terms of their likely pain, where they are in their business life cycle. Are they in startup, continuation, growth, turnaround, or recovery? What do we know about issues around control, ownership, reach, and endurance? What are their fears, uncertainties, doubts, worries, anxieties, concerns? What are they angry about? Helping them to be able to map out the likely pain indicators. Being able to speak a common language with a common process. And making sure that right from day one, you have sat down with your partners and agreed up front how they're going to measure your performance and hold you accountable for being a great partner. And so we have a tool called the Client-Centric Satisfaction Tool, and it works astonishingly well for partnerships, making sure that partners and vendors are absolutely clear about what success looks like, how they're going to measure one another's performance, making sure that they've identified what the criteria are that matter the most to them, and making sure that every quarter those criteria are being weighted and measured so that everybody knows whether you're making progress or falling backwards. Making sure that problems are identified early. Another critical part of the onboarding process is absolutely making sure that you've provided the tools and resources necessary to help them succeed. That means putting in place probably a portal. Now, I understand that in the early stages, you may not be able to afford to do that, but if you do have a portal, what you want to do is be able to gamify it, make it sticky, and make sure everybody logs in early, to be able to track who's logged in, who hasn't. Help them to rise up the book of business by gaining points, because all the salespeople, the pre-sales people, the technical people, the consultants, management, marketing are all using the portal. Making sure that you're providing them with fantastic resources and tools, updates, making sure that war stories are posted on there, making sure that they have access to the latest and greatest tools to help them to sell, and recognizing that in the first 120 days, you can be prescriptive. By end of day one, the salesperson must understand how to put together a 30-second commercial around the solutions that you offer. By the end of day two, they must understand how to do a zero objection, no pressure cold call. By day three, they will be making zero objection, no pressure cold calls using your 30-second commercial and the basic upfront contract. This is the kind of prescriptive approach that I suggest that you do. Now, what's also important to understand is that there are some very good indicators of a miserable job. And we've identified 5. 3 came from Patrick Lencioni. The first one is anonymity. The second is immeasurement. The third is irrelevance. And I would add stagnation and isolation. If you just feel like you're a cog in a great big wheel, then you're going to lose interest very quickly. Part of the reason why we have the portal and we have a scoreboard and that we gamify the process there is because people love to be measured. Let me rephrase that. A players love to be measured. Poor performing B players run from it, and C's don't want to be touched, don't want them to be measured at all, so they can stay below the parapet. Irrelevance. They absolutely want to be relevant. They want to feel like the work they're doing is important and meaningful, that it contributes. And if it's the same old, that's stagnation. And feeling like they're left at arse in the cold on their own, that's not going to work for them either. Okay? Now, make sure that you actively engage with your partners in planning accounts. Make sure that you understand what drives their end user. Make sure that you understand that the end user buys for their reasons, not your reasons. Make sure that you're investing the time, the money, the resources, the effort, the training, the coaching in helping them to be successful, to get those quick wins. Make sure that you understand very early on how to align your partner's objectives and strategy with your objectives and strategy. Understand what the individual motivation is of those salespeople and their key accounts to make sure that you're designing the ideal customer. Make sure you understand the competitive landscape. Make sure that you are putting together an analysis of what the competitive landscape looks like, who the competition are, which accounts they're going after, because among your best prospects, I would suggest, are your competitors' best customers. Make sure that you're actively mapping out which are the A, B, C accounts, which ones have the greatest growth potential, because expanding accounts are significantly cheaper and easier to close than cold new business. They close faster, they buy more, they are effectively referrals where they would typically refer you more frequently. So we want to help them get quick wins, fill that pipeline up. We also want to make sure that we understand who the prospective clients are and why they would need your help, what their pains are. We want to understand how the end user clients' offices are measured and targeted so that we can make the solutions personal. We want to understand what pressure they're under. We want to understand how to make our solutions align to help them address their personal and their strategic business objectives. We want to understand their priorities and what the symptoms are that we need to look for so that we can identify underlying pain. We want to be able to help our partners identify which pains we can help them fix and which ones we can't, and why they're important to the end user. Often you'll find that your partners won't really understand this, and what they're good at is talking about the product and doing presentations and doing demos. We don't want to do that. We want to do the demo in order to confirm the order at the end. It's not something that's done at the beginning. And if you're smart about doing this, your cost of pursuit, your cost of sale will go down. An obvious question to ask yourself before you start chasing after business with partners is, what does a pursuit cost you, whether you win or lose? It's rare in this kind of technology sale, for example, that it costs you less than 4,000 or 5,000, and it can go easily into the five-figure sum, so 40,000, 50,000. And for larger enterprise deals, it can run into the hundreds of thousands or even millions. So I have to ask you the question, when do you want to know that this won't work out? And when you multiply that cost of pursuit by the average close ratio, we could be talking hundreds of thousands per pursuit to millions or tens of millions. We need to understand which other providers can help them with a partial fix to their problem, so that when we're mapping the account, we can be prepared for the kind of questions or objections that are going to come up so that we can rehearse them. We need to understand which existing alliances our partners have to see if there's a way that we can piggyback on their processes, or that we can work in alliance with those people, or we see them as a competitive threat and we have to create a clear demarcation. We need to make sure that we understand how our complementary products and services can work together to help their end user client so that our partners get a better foothold and greater loyalty from their customers. Planning is essential. Carl von Clausewitz said it rather well. The plan never survives contact with the enemy. We absolutely get that, but it's the planning that matters. It's the planning for every single engagement with a prospect, customer, or a client. It's making sure that you do pre-call plans and post-call debriefs. It's making sure that you use the post-call debrief to feed the next pre-call plan. It's making sure that you have a roadmap of how you're planning to grow that account over the next 90 days. What 5 advancements are you planning to make? Who's going to do what by when? If it's not done, how's that going to be escalated? How are you going to control the advancement within each account? It's also critical that you steer a straight course. But one of the big challenges that we see all the time in channel management situations is that the channel manager gets in their own way. If your foot's hurting, you're probably standing on your own toe. If you're facing a problem with the performance of your partners, you need to ask yourself some tough questions. How have I created this problem? What have I done or not done to prevent this problem? What have I done to allow this problem? What have I tolerated? What can I do to make this problem go away and not come back? How do I know what's working and what isn't? Have I done planning? Have I understood their goals? Are their goals aligned with their company goals? Are their company goals and their personal goals in alignment with our corporate goals? Am I putting enough time and effort and resource into training them, into leading them, into coaching them, into identifying red flags and confronting problems? Am I making sure that we're focused on leading indicators? Is our marketing in alignment? Is it focused on the right end of the problem? Am I sitting down with them on a regular basis and helping them to plan and execute their business development activities? Have I identified those red flag indicators, like, for example, lack of prospecting, lack of engagement, limited questioning, especially in the first 120 days? Is the quality of their questions low quality? Is it just information gathering? Or are we focused on insightful, commercial, personal questions? Is my role more supervisor than coach and developer? Am I spending my time teaching them how to sell, but feeling that time is time lost? Do I only have a relationship with one or two people, perhaps the owner, but not with the salespeople selling my product? Is the training focused on product training and no questions on how do we use this to sell it? Are the salespeople nurturing a wide funnel of low quality pipeline and looking busy rather than effective? Are we not being invited in to deal midwife on opportunities? Is ego or distrust preventing them from asking for your help? Is it something you said or done that's made them scared to introduce you? Or they're just too protective and perhaps you have the wrong salesperson working on your account? Because they're a technical culture, do they hold sales in low regard? Do they see you as the enemy? Are they worried about you talking to people at their level of comfort rather than at the level of power and money that they need to be talking at? Are partners effectively giving away demo software to sell services on which they make most of their money? Is there a cultural inability to say or hear no? And when there's bad news, do you generally hear by email instead of by phone or in person? You have to make sure that you're staying on a straight course. You need to understand that the number of leads created via marketing, then qualified, and then accepted by sales is key. You need to understand how they are spending your marketing development fund and which campaigns are operating and working in the field. What are you learning from them? Are you clear about the number of sales leads that are being accepted and qualified out in the field? Which touch points are working and which aren't, and how you're advancing the sale? What's the value of opportunities in the pipeline by both stage and probability? How many registrations of deals are happening? What are the wins? How much are we generating in revenue? What's the volume of transactions? What's the revenue on average per transaction? Have we developed a cookbook with our partners? Have we created a dashboard to make sure that they can, at a glance, understand how far and fast they're progressing? Are we sure that they will do what they say that they will do? Have we got access to the cast of characters within the end user community? Or are we just talking at our place of assignment? Does our deal registration system protect the deal from competitive partners, from the vendor's direct sales source? Does it give them access to additional resources not available to others? Does it guarantee the pricing is better than for late registrants? And there are tools, for example, like the Pursuit Navigator, that allow us to ask pertinent, relevant questions to keep the sale moving forward and not getting a black eye. Making sure we've understood the trigger points that elicit risk and emotional frustration. Have we identified ways to eliminate unnecessary channel conflict and to create clear boundaries so things don't escalate and you don't find yourself competing with yourself through two different partners on a race to the bottom on price? You have to learn to manage without power. The best channel managers are program and project managers first. They are salespeople. They are genuine, effective sales managers. They're problem solvers. They're strategic thinkers who can go from the big picture down into the tactical weeds. They can have difficult conversations, and they are able to manage only with influence. They know how to build trust because they don't hire, they don't fire, and they don't drive the sales team's compensation. They need to be able to build trust with the salespeople, so salespeople will hold themselves accountable to the channel manager. They need to be the sorts of people who can herd cats and do so with a good sense of humor, a sense of clear direction. Honestly, I think channel sales management is the hardest job there is in sales because they have so many things to juggle, including internal politics that they have to protect their partners from. Now, they understand how to use technology to enable, to connect, to engage, to inform, to delight. This is not just the partner portal and the various tools that they might use, but they understand how to use social selling, LinkedIn leaders, in order to be able to build the pipeline, build connections deep and wide. They need to understand how to use the CRM and restructure it so it mirrors the selling process, making sure that it helps managers to identify where deals have got stuck and where they need help. Make sure that you're communicating through the portal or an intranet of some description, or even, if necessary, just a WhatsApp group about the communication that needs to be going on in terms of lessons learned, lessons shared, adapting and advancing. You need to make sure that throughout the process of working with a partner, you are absolutely clear that you understand that they are driven to sell for their reasons. And the top reason is that they are coin operated. If you are not helping your partners to generate income within the first 90 days, there's a very high probability, 80 to 90% of them will never sell another thing. You need to provide them with selling tools, management tools, forecasting tools that are simple and are designed by salespeople for salespeople so they actually use them. Tools that are designed by audit for audit purposes that take 3 days to complete are just going to gather dust in the salesperson's car. Make sure that you're communicating regularly, clearly, that there is alignment, that you're doing your territory and account planning, that you're using the right kind of tools, the CARE tool, keep, attain, recapture, expand, the growth account booster tool, that you're using pain questionnaires to help you identify viable opportunities, making sure that you're segmenting their existing account base, and you're using technologies like LinkedIn levers to identify where the best and quickest wins are, where to prioritize your energy, making sure that you're qualifying and effectively asking the tough questions of yourself that you'd be afraid to ask, making sure that you're doing pre-call plans, rehearsal, post-call debrief, lesson capture, using those lessons and that post-call debrief to feed your next pre-call plan. And I mentioned rehearsal. My recommendation is for every hour you're in front of the prospect, put in a minimum of 1 and ideally 3 hours of rehearsal and preparation. And when you think about it, when you think about how many hours are taken prospecting and you blowing the deal because you haven't done enough preparation, it could easily outweigh the amount of prospecting time by a factor of 50 to 1. You need to understand that you have to co-develop the solution with the prospect and with the partner so that you identify the go or no-go steps. You identify that an early qualified no is a win for both sides. You understand how to pursue each account, and you get the prospect's fingerprints all over it. Ideally, get the partner's fingerprints all over it as well, so that you and they are kicking into an open goal. In terms of proposing and advancing the sale, you need to co-develop the solution. That means sitting down, asking questions, diagnosing, going back, drafting what the proposition would look like, getting feedback, making sure that you've developed coaches and sponsors so that you can have a win-win-win or no deal outcome. Make sure that you're operating at every level within the organization. And then focus obsessively, completely obsessively, on the service delivery. You want to be absolutely certain that your partners, customers, are saying, wow, thank goodness we worked with you guys. Best decision we ever made. Make sure that they're focused on constantly under-promising and over-delivering, and that they've contracted with the end user to have regular reviews every 2 weeks by phone for an A, every 3 months face-to-face in person with the sales team, with the management team, with the executive team. Making sure that you're developing processes and systems to help them grow and develop, not only as individuals but in their career. Making sure that you're helping them put together the best possible sales approach. Providing workshops, consultancy, helping them to really focus on understanding their end customer to get the best out of those relationships. Working with them on the end customer's roadmap so that they can work strategically to understand how they're going to be able to move forward, products and services that they need to develop. It can feed your own R&D. Now, on top of that, you also want to be coaching your people. And so you want to make sure that you're regularly in the trenches with them. You get stuck in. You do regular appraisals and reviews. You make sure that you're providing them with help at every step of the way. You don't want them to suddenly find themselves in a situation where they can't make it work. You want to make sure that every opportunity that's been qualified and meets your requirements is feasible to advance. You want to make sure that at every step they feel like you are genuinely their partner. You're not just in it for your selfish reasons. You're in it to help them achieve their reasons, their possible outcomes. Make sure that you're sat with them, prospecting together. Challenge them with regular pipeline review questions. If you listen to my previous podcast, I've talked some of those through. But what's new in your pipeline? What's advanced? What's the agreed and contracted for next step? What's not advanced? If not, why not? What are you going to do to advance it or disqualify it? And there's a raft of questions that we've included in those previous podcasts. Also, make sure that you really focus on building a world-class partner team. Provide them with training, with workshops, with consultancy. Provide them with the tools. Make sure that you're coaching them. That is your job. Get the best out of them. Make sure that you're taking feedback, so you have to listen to them. Make sure recruitment is a constant part of your relationship with them. So here are my contact details. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter, I'm the_Inquisitor, capital T, capital I, and I'm on LinkedIn. So I'm under Sandler, Sales Management Trainer, all one word, no spaces. You can phone me on 07515 937 221, and we have just released, David Davies and I, Making Channel Sales Work. It is available today on Kindle, and it will be available in paperback format from the 1st of August on Amazon. And if you go to the presenter to audience announcements, I've put links there. If you want to get a hold of a free chapter of Making Channel Sales Work, there's a link. If you want to get a free copy of Making Channel Sales Work, then make sure you send me an email at mcalkey@sandler.com with your best channel sales limerick. And that's my time. Thank you all very much. If you have any questions, I'll give you 2 minutes to come back to me. Nothing showing? Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening. I look forward to hearing from you. If you've got any questions about channel sales management, or you'd like to know more about workshops and programs that we run on making channel sales work, do get in touch. And thank you all very much. Bye-bye.